When AI processed the latest CT scans of Pompeii's victims, it uncovered details inside these ancient bodies that completely defied expectations. For nearly 2,000 years, the people buried by Mount Vesuvius have been seen as frozen snapshots of a single tragic moment. But when researchers ran the scan data through advanced AI models, the system detected hidden structures and patterns that no human researcher had ever noticed. The results were so unusual that some experts wondered if the AI had made an error. It didn't. And what the technology revealed inside those preserved forms has left the scientific world stunned. Bodies trapped in time. On August 24, 79 AD, Mount Vesuvius unleashed hell upon the Roman city of Pompeii. Within hours, pyroclastic flows traveling at over 100 miles per hour engulfed the entire settlement. The superheated ash and pumice buried everything: buildings, streets, and approximately 2,000 people who couldn't escape in time. But the volcanic material that killed them also preserved them. As the ash hardened, it formed perfect molds of their bodies. In 1863, Italian archaeologist Giuseppe Fiorelli developed a revolutionary technique. By carefully pouring plaster into these molds, he could recreate the victims' bodies with startling accuracy. The casts revealed people crouching in corners, families huddled together, individuals covering their faces against the burning ash. Each figure became a three-dimensional snapshot of ancient tragedy. For over 150 years, these plaster casts stood in museums and archaeological sites, silently telling their stories. Researchers could study their positions, estimate ages from visible features, and make educated guesses about their final moments. But there was a fundamental limitation. The plaster concealed whatever remained inside. The actual bones, teeth, and skeletal structures were locked away, hidden beneath inches of hardened material. Traditional archaeological methods hit a wall. Breaking open the casts would destroy the very artifacts researchers wanted to preserve. For generations, scientists could only speculate about what secrets lay beneath the surface. Were these people healthy or diseased? Young or old? How exactly did they die? The answers remained frustratingly out of reach. Then came modern scanning and, eventually, artificial intelligence, the technology that sees through stone. By the early 2000s, archaeologists began experimenting with CT scanners on Pompeii's plaster casts. The same technology that allows doctors to peer inside living patients was now aimed at 2,000-year-old victims. At first, it felt like science fiction. Finally, researchers could look inside without shattering the delicate shells. But the results were disappointing. Bone and plaster are almost twins in density, and the scans produced ghostly, half-legible images. A rib could look like a plaster ridge. A jawline might fade into ash. Specialists disagreed over what they were seeing, and many casts remained a frustrating mystery. That changed in 2023. A team of archaeologists, radiologists, and AI engineers joined forces to attempt something radical, feeding decades of CT scan data into machine learning systems. Instead of leaving interpretation to the human eye, they let artificial intelligence do the work. The algorithms weren't designed for archaeology at first. They had been trained on thousands of modern skeletal CT scans, teaching them to recognize bone density patterns, the fine details of dental structures, and even faint traces of preserved tissue. But once applied to Pompeii, they became something else entirely. A machine with the uncanny ability to see through stone. But the team didn't stop there. They introduced contrast agents, special dyes injected carefully into the plaster casts that could differentiate between various materials. When combined with AI analysis, these agents allowed the system to create color-coded 3D models. Blue might indicate plaster, white represented bone, and red could highlight areas where soft tissue remnants still clung to skeletal surfaces. The AI didn't simply sharpen blurry images. It reconstructed skeletons that had been shattered by centuries, restoring missing sections using predictive models grounded in anatomical logic. It trained itself to tell plaster apart from bone, ash apart from teeth, and even to recognize tiny strands of cartilage still attached to ancient joints. What looked like meaningless static to a person became a decipherable language to the AI, one it was finally able to interpret. The work was neither fast nor easy. Scanning just one cast required 12 straight hours of exposure, producing massive terabytes of raw information. After that came the real challenge: days of algorithmic rebuilding, comparing millions of data points until an entire body materialized as a pale, ghost-like 3D digital figure. Once finished, researchers could rotate these models, zoom in to study tooth enamel or the wear on joints, and even digitally peel away layers of plaster to expose the bones hidden underneath. Dr. Massimo Osanna, director of the Pompeii Archaeological Park, described the experience as unlocking a time capsule inside another time capsule. The plaster casts had already preserved astonishing detail, but the AI-powered CT scans uncovered layers of knowledge unseen since 79 AD. The system also revealed it could detect even the tiniest clues. Minute fractures in skulls pointed to blunt force impacts. Shifts in bone density traced nutritional histories reaching back to childhood. In one extraordinary case, the AI discovered early dental procedures, ancient fillings, showing that Roman medical skill was far more sophisticated than once assumed. But the scans weren't only logging injuries. The most striking discoveries came from the contrasts. Alongside signs of violent ends were hints of strength, endurance, and surprising refinement. In short, the AI wasn't merely recording how the people of Pompeii died, it was uncovering how they had lived. And this became most vivid, and far more unexpectedly captivating, in the secrets hidden within their teeth. The discovery that changed everything. When the AI-enhanced images of the Pompeii victims' teeth first appeared, the research team assumed something had gone wrong. The dental structures looked impossibly pristine, too clean, too healthy, too modern to be real. They repeated the scans, same results. They reviewed the AI's calibration again and again. Everything was operating flawlessly. The conclusion they were left with was astonishing. These ancient Romans had better dental health than most people living today. This shouldn't have been remotely possible. Traditional archaeological thinking said that ancient populations endured terrible oral health. With no fluoridated water, no toothpaste, and nothing resembling modern dentistry, their mouths should have been full of cavities, infections, and missing teeth. Yet the CT scans revealed something entirely different. The Pompeii victims showed almost no decay, virtually no cavities, and shockingly low wear relative to their ages. Some individuals well into their 40s and 50s still had complete sets of teeth, with barely any deterioration at all. The AI's analysis showed enamel thickness and bone density around the roots that actually surpassed today's averages. From a dental perspective, these people had world-class, almost elite-level teeth. The only remaining question was, why? The answer emerged by combining CT data with geological studies of the region and chemical tests on preserved food remains. The people of Pompeii had something we don't: a naturally mineral-rich environment infused with fluorine, thanks to Mount Vesuvius. The volcanic soil surrounding the city was extraordinarily fertile and loaded with minerals. Crops grown there absorbed fluorine from the earth, not at harmful levels, but at amounts that were perfect for strengthening teeth. Their water sources were also naturally fluoridated due to volcanic rock filtration. Without ever realizing it, the residents of Pompeii spent their lives drinking fluorine-rich water and eating mineral-packed foods. Their diet made an equally powerful difference. The ancient Pompeians ate whole grains, vegetables, fish, and olive oil, a Mediterranean diet still hailed as one of the healthiest in the world. They consumed almost no processed sugar, simply because refined sugar didn't exist in their time. Their only sweeteners came from honey and fruit, which don't fuel the same cavity-causing bacteria that modern sugar does. The AI scans even revealed patterns of tooth wear that told intimate stories about individuals. Some victims had unique wear grooves, suggesting they used their teeth as tools, perhaps in weaving, sewing, or leatherworking. Others showed enamel stains hinting at specific dietary habits or exposure to certain materials through their jobs. Each tooth became a personal detail, a tiny biography preserved in enamel. But this remarkable discovery came with an unsettling twist. These were not weak, malnourished, or chronically ill people. They were strong, durable, and incredibly healthy, facts that made the truth of their final moments, uncovered in later scans, far more haunting. And the teeth were only the beginning. As the AI reconstructions continued, researchers realized the technology wasn't simply revealing health patterns. It was dismantling long-standing assumptions that had shaped our understanding for more than a century. Rewriting history, one scan at a time. The discoveries about dental health drew global attention, but the AI scans uncovered something even more transformative. Nearly every long-held assumption archaeologists had about specific Pompeii victims turned out to be incorrect. The most striking example came from one of the site's most iconic casts, two bodies frozen in what looked like a final, heartbreaking embrace. For decades, tour guides called them the Two Maidens. Their story touched millions, two young women, presumed to be sisters, or perhaps a mother and daughter, holding each other as disaster closed in. But the truth was entirely different. They weren't women at all. The AI-enhanced CT scans showed skeletal features that were unmistakably male. Pelvic dimensions, skull shapes, limb bone thickness. Every biological marker pointed to the fact that at least one, and quite possibly both, were men. DNA testing confirmed it. The two maidens were, in reality, two men. Their embrace might represent a completely different relationship. Father and son, siblings, close friends, or romantic partners. We can't know their exact story, but we now know the assumptions built solely on posture and body size had been entirely misguided. This pattern echoed across the entire AI analysis. A victim labeled for years as an elderly woman, judged by a slight frame and curled posture, was revealed to be a teenage boy. A figure believed to be a pregnant woman shielding her stomach was actually a man. With no skeletal evidence supporting the maternal interpretation archaeologists had embraced. The AI had no interest in fitting convenient narratives. It simply interpreted what the bones physically demonstrated. The technology also dismantled decades of assumptions surrounding social class. Pompeii operated under a strict hierarchy, and archaeologists had traditionally classified victims by where they were found and what objects were nearby. Bodies discovered in luxurious homes were labeled as wealthy residents, while those found in smaller quarters were assumed to be workers or enslaved people. But the AI scans painted a more complicated portrait. Bone density and growth patterns reveal nutrition levels during childhood, and children raised with consistent nourishment develop skeletal markers distinct from those who grew up malnourished. Some individuals found in servant quarters displayed skeletal development typical of well-fed, privileged childhoods. suggesting they may have been family members caught in the wrong location at the wrong time, or that social boundaries in Pompeii were more fluid than believed. At the same time, some bodies recovered from elite villas showed skeletal signs of childhood deprivation and heavy labor. They may have been enslaved individuals who attained higher household roles later in life, or perhaps relatives from poorer branches of wealthy families. The AI couldn't provide exact biographies, but it made one thing unmistakably clear. Where someone died did not necessarily reflect who they were in life. Age estimates underwent dramatic revision. Traditional methods relied heavily on visible features and tooth wear patterns, but the AI could analyze bone density, joint deterioration, and microscopic structural changes with far greater accuracy. Several victims aged as elderly in museum plaques turned out to be middle-aged. One individual estimated at over 60 was actually in his early 40s. This matters because it changes demographic understanding of who stayed in Pompeii. Historical accounts suggest many wealthy families fled when the eruption began, leaving behind slaves and those too poor to escape. But the AI scans showed a wide age distribution, including many healthy adults in their prime. People who should have been able to evacuate. Why did they stay? Were they trapped? Did they underestimate the danger until it was too late? The revised ages reopened old questions. The most disturbing findings came from trauma analysis. The AI could measure impact angles and force distribution in ways impossible for human observers. Some victims showed defensive injuries, arms raised to protect faces, hands with fractures from trying to shield heads. These people died fighting to survive, not peacefully accepting fate. Others showed no defensive wounds at all, suggesting they were killed instantly, possibly never seeing the death that struck them. One victim's skull showed a perfectly circular depressed fracture, consistent with being hit by a volcanic bomb the size of a grapefruit traveling at terminal velocity. The impact would have killed instantly. The person probably never knew what happened. Children's remains presented particularly heartbreaking evidence. The AI detected healed fractures in some young skeletons, suggesting injuries from daily life in ancient Rome. Perhaps falls, accidents, or, unfortunately, possible abuse. These weren't romanticized victims from a perfect ancient world. They were real children with real hardships who happened to die in history's most violent volcanic disaster. And yet, as devastating as these individual stories were, they pointed towards something larger. A truth that overturned everything archaeologists thought they knew about Pompeii. The disturbing truth about how they died. This is where the AI's findings become genuinely unsettling. For decades, the accepted narrative was almost poetic in its tragedy. Pompeii's residents, caught off guard by Mount Vesuvius, died relatively peaceful deaths from suffocation or heat exposure as volcanic ash gently buried them. The plaster casts reinforce this idea. People curled in corners, sitting against walls, appearing almost at rest. It was a catastrophe, yes, but somehow sanitized by time and archaeological interpretation. The AI-enhanced CT scans destroyed this comfortable narrative. The technology revealed that the majority of victims died violently, traumatically, and in ways that must have been absolutely terrifying. The disturbing details accumulated with each scan: head injuries, broken bones, collapsed spines, and crushing impacts. The pyroclastic surge that killed most Pompeians wasn't just hot ash floating down like deadly snow. It was a superheated avalanche of gas and rock fragments traveling faster than a hurricane. With temperatures exceeding 500 degrees Fahrenheit, it struck with a physical force comparable to that of a car. The AI scans showed skeletal damage consistent with direct impact and pressure. injuries that couldn't be explained by simple falls. One particularly disturbing finding involved what archaeologists call heat-induced postures. Some victims' bodies show the pugilistic position. Limbs drawn up, fists clenched, which happens when extreme heat causes muscles to contract. Traditional interpretation suggested the result was a final spasm of death. The AI revealed something worse. Many of these victims were still alive when the heat began to affect their bodies. The AI also detected something called brain tissue calcification. Under extreme heat, brain matter can undergo chemical changes that leave behind unusual deposits. This buildup of pressure may have damaged skulls from within. Several victims showed evidence of this process, a grim reminder of how intense and disturbing the eruption truly was. Respiratory systems showed signs of intense thermal damage. The AI could identify changes in bone structure around nasal cavities and throat areas consistent with inhaling superheated gas. The tissue itself is long gone, but the damage to surrounding bone structures tells the story. Victims breathed in air hot enough to overwhelm them instantly or within moments. The scans also revealed evidence of what killed first versus what happened after death. Some fractures showed signs of bleeding and limited healing responses, meaning the person was still alive after injury. Other fractures had no such indicators, suggesting they occurred after death, likely from the sheer weight of volcanic debris. This is disturbing. The AI analysis of bone trauma patterns, combined with geological data about the eruption sequence, suggests many victims survived the initial pyroclastic surges only to be killed by subsequent waves. They survived the first wave, possibly found temporary shelter, and then were struck down by another surge. Some victims show evidence of moving to different locations, and injury patterns on one side of the body versus another suggest they repositioned themselves while wounded before a final fatal blow. One victim showed particularly tragic evidence: defensive fractures on both arms, a partially healed rib fracture from days before the eruption, and then massive trauma to the back of the skull. This person was already injured, raised their arms to defend themselves, and was struck from behind. The AI could reconstruct their final moments with horrible clarity. Injured, trying to protect themselves, killed by a blow they never saw coming. The scans also hinted at severe facial injuries, damage that would have left victims in unimaginable pain. These people weren't quietly preserved. They endured some of history's most violent natural forces. The AI revealed that the peaceful poses of the casts were never the full truth. The comfortable narrative of peaceful preservation was always a modern fantasy. The reality, now proven by advanced technology, is far darker. This leads us to one final question. What does it mean to rely on machines to pull truth out of the silence left by time? AI doesn't just uncover data. It functions almost like a form of technological time travel. We can't walk into the world of 79 AD, but algorithms can retrieve whatever fragments still endure, messages preserved in bone, ash, and enamel, and allow us to interpret them for the very first time. The AI study of Pompeii victims' CT scans has accomplished something both extraordinary and deeply unsettling. It has made us face the actual humans behind the iconic casts, the astonishingly healthy teeth, the brutal ends they suffered, and the shattered assumptions we held about gender, status, and identity. With every new finding, another layer of the stories we once accepted peels away. We thought we understood these ancient individuals. The AI showed us how little we truly knew. And this is unsettling not because the truths are grim, though many of them absolutely are, but because it exposes how easily we impose our own interpretations on history without ever possessing the full picture. So what do you think? Has AI finally allowed the victims of Pompeii to reclaim their voices? Or are we still just beginning to uncover the truth hidden beneath centuries of ash? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.